You've probably heard how important GPUs are to AI. They're the hardware cards that AI models run on. Understanding how GPUs compute and how to write a GPU program is essential to understanding why AI models need GPUs. And that's what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to show you how to write your first GPU program. These sorts of efficient GPU programs are the powerhouse behind tools like PyTorch. I'll take you all the way from setup through multiple different examples, culminating in a computer vision program. We're going to write an edge detector from scratch using HIP, which is AMD's version of CUDA. All right, let's jump in. First things first, we're going to need an AMD GPU and we're going to need to get ROCm installed. I'm going to show you how to do this two ways. The first way is to spin up a GPU Droplet on DigitalOcean, and that will come with ROCm pre-installed. The second way is to install ROCm yourself, so this applies if you have an AMD GPU, and I'll also be doing that with a GPU Droplet, but I'll just be running it on a base version of Ubuntu. So you'll be able to follow that if you have an AMD GPU and an Ubuntu-based system. So let's spin these up now. First, we'll show how to spin up a GPU Droplet with ROCm pre-installed. Go to your DigitalOcean dashboard and then click on Create GPU Droplet. Choose your data center region. I'm going to click Atlanta. And then for our operating system, we're going to choose the AI ML Ready operating system. So this is Linux bundled with the required GPU drivers. Scroll down and select your GPU card. So we're going to pick AMD, and I'm going to pick the MI300X. And we just need one. You can choose 8, but we just need one. We don't need backups, we don't need extra storage, and now I'm just going to add my SSH key. If you need to add a new SSH key, you can just click Add SSH key here, and it will give you the instructions to do so. Then we can scroll down and give our GPU Droplet a name. So I'll do Ubuntu MI300X, and then we can create the droplet. Next, we're going to need to SSH into the droplet, so I'm going to go to VS Code, open the command palette, and then add a new SSH host. Type in SSH root at, and then we're going to grab the IP address of the droplet once it's done spinning up. Scroll down and copy the public IP address of your droplet, and then paste that in, and we can add A for agent forwarding. And you can add that to your user SSH profile. And now I'm going to open up the config, and I'm just going to change the name to Ubuntu MI300X so I can keep all of my droplets organized. Now we can open the command palette back up and connect to an SSH host. And I'll select that Ubuntu MI300X droplet. You'll get a warning here, a fingerprint warning, so this is just because we haven't connected to this droplet yet, so we can hit continue. And now we are all connected. And now I'll show you how to install ROCm from scratch. If you followed the last step, you can jump ahead. Installing ROCm is really easy. Just go to the ROCm installation Linux page, and then you can just copy and paste these commands. Now that the installation is complete, we can verify the installation. So, for example, I can do which hipcc to check to see that the compiler was installed. Now, you may not need to install the AMD GPU driver because modern versions of Linux have an AMD driver built in, but these Linux drivers lag behind the official drivers. So we're using an MI300X. This is a really new card. So the open source Linux driver probably doesn't have support for it yet. So we can check this by running ROCm SMI. And since we get an error, we know that we need to install the driver. So we need to make sure to remove any pre-existing AMD GPU drivers, so we can go to this page. We can just copy this command. And then we can just go back and copy this installation command. And now we're going to reboot the system. After we give it a minute to boot up, we can reconnect. And we can see that we have successfully connected. So now we can run that command again. And we can see the GPU is recognized, and now we can see some information about it. Now we are finally ready to move on to writing our first HIP program. First, we include the IOStream, vector, and CMath headers from the standard library. These allow us to print to the screen, to manage data lists, and to do math. And we also include the HIP runtime header. So this is what actually provides the functionality to do things like allocate memory on the GPU. This next block here is the heart of the GPU program. So this is the GPU kernel. So this is what's actually going to run on the threads of our GPU, and it's marked with global to denote that. Since this same kernel is going to run on each of the threads, we need a way to determine which element of the vector each thread is going to work on. And we do that by calculating the thread's index. So the way we do this is by taking the index of the block that the thread is in, and then multiplying by the size of the block. So that gives us our offset. And then from there, we just add on the index of the thread within that block. So this gives each thread a unique index. And for a given thread, we calculate the element of the sum vector at that index, as the sum of the elements of the constituent vectors at that index. And finally, we have this if statement here. So it's actually possible to initialize more threads than you need. So we're just making sure that the unused threads don't do anything and they don't access memory they're not supposed to. So that is the heart of the program, and the rest of the program is just setting up this addition so we can actually perform it and run the program. So we'll scroll down here to the main function. First, we define how large we want our vectors to be. So in this case, we're defining vectors to be 1 million elements in length. And then we're calculating the memory required to store a vector of that size. So we're just multiplying the number of elements by the size of a given element. Then we create the dynamic arrays that will represent each of the vectors in our program. So we create 3 arrays, each with 1 million elements, and each element is a float. We have our vectors A, B, and C, and then this H prefix stands for host. Now that we've created these vectors, we can loop through and populate them with some dynamic values. So for the first vector, the ith element simply has a value of I, and for the second vector, the ith element has a value of 2 times I. And we're just doing this so our program isn't just simply adding to 0 vectors. Now scrolling down, this is where we allocate memory on our GPU. So first we create 3 pointers, one for each of our vectors, and this D prefix stands for device, which means GPU. And then we call the HIP memory allocate function 3 times. So this allocates memory of size bytes, and it takes in the memory address of the pointer for the given vector, and it stores in that pointer the GPU memory address of this allocated memory. So it writes as the value of the pointer on the host, the memory location of the corresponding vector on the GPU. So at this point, we've created our vectors A and B on the CPU, and we've allocated memory for all 3 of our vectors on the GPU. Now we need to copy the values of the vectors A and B from the CPU to the GPU, and that's exactly what this HIP memory copy function does. So we're copying the data of the vector on the CPU, and we're copying it to the GPU memory location stored in that pointer. And now we actually have our vectors on the GPU and we can perform calculations. So here we're configuring the GPU kernel launch parameters. First, we define how many threads we're going to put in each block. So this is a hardware tuning parameter, but 256 is a pretty standard choice. And then this calculation here just ensures that we have enough of those blocks to cover our entire 1 million element vector. And then scrolling down, this is where the work really begins. So this is when the CPU tells the GPU to start working. First, we pass in the kernel that we actually want to execute. And then here we just pass in those values of the blocks per grid and threads per block that we just calculated above. The 00 here is for more advanced configuration like shared memory, so we can ignore that. And then finally, we have the arguments that we actually pass into this vector add kernel. So these are pointers to the vectors in the GPU memory that we just copied over. Now, right after the CPU executes this command and tells the GPU to do that calculation, it's going to move on. So what we need to do is synchronize. So we need to wait for this calculation to complete. Otherwise, we could potentially read values that are invalid. And after the calculation is done, we can copy the resultant vector from the GPU memory into the CPU memory. And here we're just verifying our results. So we're performing the same exact computation on the CPU, and then we're checking to make sure that those values are equal to the value returned by the GPU within a margin of error. And if it was successful, then we just print out a success message, and then we free up that memory on the GPU. So now that you understand how this program works, let's compile and run it. So we're going to open up the terminal and run our compiler hipcc, and we're going to run that on our vector add file, and we'll call the output just vector add. We get some warnings here because the code doesn't check for errors, but that's fine. So we can just go ahead and run vector add. And we can see the addition was successful and we added 1 million elements successfully. So now you've written, compiled, and executed your first GPU program. Now that you understand the general structure that GPU programs take, I'm going to take you through 2 more examples quickly. The first is matrix multiplication, and the second is a computer vision edge detection. I'm just going to highlight the important parts and show you the results, but again, both of these files are going to be on GitHub, so you can go check it out there. So the first example is matrix multiplication, and the reason is that it's what powers most of the AI models that you probably interact with on a day-to-day basis. But what I really want to show you is the difference in speed between writing your own GPU programs and using optimized versions in libraries. So in this case, it's going to be ROCblast, which provides elementary linear algebra operations similar to cuBLAS. So let's see how it works. We're going to multiply 2 1024 by 1024 matrices. On a CPU, this will take a while. On a GPU, it'll be fast, and using ROCblast, it'll be really fast. So let's check it out. So here is our naive implementation of matrix multiplication. This is our kernel like vector add from the previous example. In this case, we're not calculating the index of an output vector. Instead, we have to calculate 2 values, the row and column of an output matrix. So for each cell in that output matrix, we're calculating the dot product between the corresponding row in A and the corresponding column in B. And we're doing it by calculating that dot product with a for loop. So we're iterating over every element of this dot product and adding them all up to get the final output. And inside the brackets here is a calculation to get the proper element. Since A and B are really one-dimensional arrays, This is a way to get the index as if the matrix was flattened. So for each output cell, we do this naive dot product and then assign it to the output cell in the proper output array. Besides that, this whole program is pretty similar. Instead, we're working with multiple dimensions here because matrices are 2D. So M is the rows of A, K is the columns of A, and the rows of B, the shared dimension. And then N is the columns of B. And another difference here is down in this threads per block and blocks per grid. So we're using 2 dimensions here instead of 1 dimension like we did before. So a dim3 type is actually a 3-dimensional object. And last time we just passed in 1 value, and that defaults the other values to 1. So it's basically like a 3-dimensional representation of a 1D vector. So we have a 16 by 16 tile of threads per block. And that's more useful because we're working with 2D data here. But besides that, we run the program in the same exact way. So we do this as a warm-up run. And then here we're actually timing this run, so we can compare it to the ROCblast implementation. But besides that, the rest of the program is pretty much the same, except in this correction here, we're only checking the first 10 elements. And additionally, we're just calculating the flops of this program to measure its performance. So let's go ahead and run this file. Again, we're going to open up the terminal and HIPCC, matrix multiply CPP, and again, we'll just call the output matrix multiply. So we get the same warnings, but you can ignore them, and now we can run matrix multiply. So we can see that was still really fast, so it was successful, and it took about 49 or 50 milliseconds. And that comes out to 4,300 gigaflops, so that's pretty crazy. So let's compare it to the optimized ROCblast implementation. Here is the ROCblast version of this matrix multiplication, so you can see here we're including the ROCblast header, and in this case we don't need to define our own kernel, so you'll notice there's no global keyword up here or anything like that. We just have the main function of this program. So we have all the same setup as the naive implementation, but if we scroll down, we're going to start to see differences. This is the key difference here. So this is the optimized matrix operation. So this ROCblast function performs generalized matrix multiplication. So I'll put the form of it up on the screen. So we have to set these constants alpha and beta. So we set beta to 0 and alpha to 1. And that just returns us to regular matrix multiplication. So we just have to do this, so we're doing the same operation as the naive approach that we did in the last file. But besides that, we just call this ROCblast function and then again synchronize. So this is our warm-up run, and then here we time it. And besides that, the rest of the function is basically the same. So we just verify the result and then report the execution time and the performance in gigaflops. So let's go ahead and execute this. We open up the terminal, and again, we run HIPCC matrix multiply, and this time it's ROCblast.cpp. And then we make the output matrix multiply ROCblast. And finally, we have to tell the linker to link against the ROCblast library. Again, we compiled successfully, and now we can run the function. So that took only about 5 milliseconds, which is almost a 10 times speed up from our previous naive implementation. In production, you're going to be using these optimized libraries most of the time, or using a framework like PyTorch that uses these under the hood. But it's still good to know how GPU programming works so you actually understand what's going on under the hood. And depending on your area of research, you might need to be making these kernels yourself. So let's finish up with a cool example, which is image convolution. So let's see how we can write a convolution kernel directly in ROCm's HIP. So here is our kernel, a 2D convolution. Each thread in our GPU is going to calculate the result for one output pixel. So again, we're calculating the column and row of that pixel, just like we did in the naive matrix multiplication example. Next, we do our boundary check as before, and then we define a variable that will hold the sum of this convolution. We define this variable that's half the size of the filter, which will let us center this filter on the pixel in question. We then have these nested loops that iterate through each cell of the input filter. So we're going to use a 3x3 filter, which means that this will loop 9 times. For a given iteration, we calculate the absolute global coordinates of the input image's pixel that's sitting under the corresponding element of the filter. And this calculation here is clamping. So for the edge pixels, the filter is going to overflow over the side of the image. And so we're basically just extending the image and taking the value of the edge pixel for those non-existent pixels. Finally, we multiply the pixel by the filter value, and then we add that to the sum. So we're doing the dot product of this filter over the image centered on the pixel in question. And then we just assign that to the proper index in our output. So in our main function here, we're going to have a 512 by 512 image. And for the filter, we're going to use this Sobel filter. So this is a filter for edge detection, in this case, horizontal edge detection. So you can imagine this if this filter is placed on the edge of our square, for example, then when we think about the dot product, we're going to have a sum of positive values here because white is represented by 1. And then black is represented by 0, so this row is going to contribute nothing. And then obviously the dot product of 0 with whatever is going to be 0. So this is going to contribute 0 to the sum, this is going to contribute 0 to the sum, and then this is going to leave us with a positive value. Now, let's imagine that we're somewhere of uniform color. So if we're in the middle of a black patch of the image, black is represented by 0, so this filter is going to be dotted with a 0 matrix and be 0. But what happens if we're over a white section of the image? So if we're in the middle of our white square, then we're going to be dotting this matrix with a matrix of 1s. So the 0 row is going to contribute nothing. This row is going to contribute +4. So we have 1 times 1 plus 2 times 1 plus 1 times 1. So that's going to be 4. And then this row is going to contribute -4. So it's the same calculation, but all the numbers are negative. So when we do the dot product, we're adding -4 plus 0 plus 4. And we're going to get 0 again. So everywhere in this image that's not a horizontal edge, we're going to get 0, and just on the edges, we're going to get a positive value. So this is a filter that we can use to detect horizontal edges. The rest of this program just sets this all up just like before. So let's go ahead and compile and run this program. So again, we have HIPCC, and then we have image convolution, and we're going to make our output image convolution. So now we can go ahead and run image convolution. And we can see our input was saved, our output was saved, and we can view these files. So here's what our input image looks like, and here's what our output image looks like. As you can see, we successfully detected the horizontal edges in this image, and we did it using pure HIP code with no PyTorch. AI frameworks like PyTorch, TensorFlow, or even JAX provide really high-level abstractions for building complicated AI models. But under the hood, it's all the same. Memory management, kernel launches, and parallel threads. It's useful to know how that high-level PyTorch code you write in Python is ultimately calling these compiled libraries under the hood, written in either HIP or CUDA. But it doesn't stop there. There's different layers of software abstractions that have to take that compiled code and turn it into something that the GPU can actually execute directly. I made an entire video on the AI compute stack that goes through every layer of this stack so you can truly understand what's going on when an AI model is running. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one.